want a way to pass the result of the first query to the second query in one query using a subquery. So I've modified the query here to make it look more elegant, and if implemented a subquery. So a subquery basically is a query nested inside another query. So what I've done here, I've started with a select statement and picked out the columns from the film table, and in the where clause I have applied some conditions. So I've said where the rental rate is greater. Okay, so it will output this result first and use that result of this first query and use it for the second query. So where rental rate is greater, and then this is where the second query starts from. So this is select, and I've applied an AVG to the rental rate from the film. So the second query is nested inside the first. You can see the brackets as the opening brackets, and that's the closing brackets. So the query inside the bracket is what is called a subquery or an inner query. The query that contains the subquery is known as the outer query. Postgres executes the query that contains the subquery in the following sequence. First, it executes the subquery, okay, which is this query here. Second, it gets the results and then pass it to the outer query. Third, it executes the outer query. So the format in which Postgres executes, first of all, it will execute the subquery, all right, which is the inner query, the query that contains the query in the brackets. This is the bracket here. So this query here is what is known as the subquery or inner query, while this here is known as the outer query. That is the query that contains the subquery. So when the code executes, it will execute the subquery first, which is this query. And once that query is executed, it will use the result from this query and pass it on to this outer query here. And the third, then the outer query uses that result and executes it. So let me execute so you can see. All right, so this is what the output looks like. A subquery can also return 0 or more rows. So this is just a simple illustration of how to implement a subquery. You can also use other operators when you are implementing subqueries. For example, you can use the subquery with an in operator and also with an exist operator. Many thanks for watching. I hope it has been useful. Please do let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching, and bye for now. Hello and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, you'll learn how to use the Postgres update statement to update existing data in a table. Let's have a look at a typical syntax. So this is what the syntax will look like to update data in a table. So you start with the update keyword, followed by the name of the table. Then you use the set keyword. This set is important because this is what activates the change. So you type in the word set, followed by the column name you're trying to make the change on. Then you use the equals to sign. This equals to basically is what you use to change the value. So after the column name, you set the new value. If you're changing more than one column, then you separate the first column with a comma, and then you do the same for the second column. If you're adding more than 2 columns, again a comma, and so on. And then you specify a where condition. The where is important. The where acts as a filter to prevent you from updating any other records in the table. So the condition you specify in the where clause is important because that enables that only the columns that match the condition in the where clause will be updated. So let's see how this works. I've logged into the PG4 admin, and the database I'm going to use to illustrate is a database called Fruits, and it's inside the public schema. And the table I'm going to update is this table here called berries. So I'm going to right click on the berries table. One advantage of using this PG4 tool, it makes things a lot easier for you. So rather than me writing the script from scratch, I can just go here where it says script and select update, and it will begin writing some of these scripts for me. All I need to do is just make some modifications. So basically this is what it's done. It's saying this is the update statement. The public refers to the schema. Berries refers to the name of the table. So this is what I'm doing, is asking me what am I changing. So set here is what I need to specify what data I'm changing. So this indicates the name of the column. So I am going to, before you make any modification to a table, it's always best to see what the table contains first. So I'm going to do a quick select statement. Do a select star from berries. Where you've got more than one statement in the editor, it's best to highlight what you're trying to execute so that the editor doesn't get confused. That's one of the reasons you should always have a semicolon after each statement. Notice I have an error and the editor puts a dot where it thinks I've got the error. That's because I've got the name of my table wrong. So I've got a missed out an extra R. So I just type that in and I'll run the query again. All right, so this is the content of the table I'm trying to make some updates on. And when you are making update, the process is the same, whether you're making updates to one or several columns in a table. All right, say I want to make some modification to this here called strawberries. I want to change the name of the strawberry. I want to add some extra text. I just want to add strawberries and then followed by the word UK, just to indicate that the strawberries come from UK. So the way I would do that is in the set area, I will get rid of the ID because I'm not changing the ID. What I'm changing is the name. Okay, so I'm going to say set berry name. That's the name of this column. I'm going to set it, and then I need an equals to sign to indicate the new value I'm going to give it. I'm going to call it strawberries UK. So I've added the word UK next to the strawberries. If I was to do that if I didn't include this where clause here, what that will do, it will update all the strawberry, everything here will update this to strawberries UK, that to strawberries UK, and this to strawberries UK. The where clause prevents that happening. This is very important because if you're in a production environment and you have thousands of records, if you don't include the where condition, it will just update everything, and that could be disastrous. So the where clause is very important. So I've used this set keyword to indicate where I want to make the change. So I'm changing the berry name, which is this here, to strawberries UK. In the where condition is where I need to attach the condition. So I will now say where berry underscore ID is equals to 1. So what that means, it will only change or update the records where this condition is true. You can see here the berry ID here is 1. So that means if I run this script, it will not affect the other records. So let's give that a go. I just select that and click on this to execute. If all goes well, it tells you query returned successfully. If I run this select statement again, you'll notice the change has been made. You can see now it's now updated this to strawberries UK. So that's how you perform an update statement on a table. The process is the same whether you are updating 1 record or 1,000 records. The key thing to take away here, you must not forget to include the where clause. If you don't include the where clause in an update, the update applies to the entire column in the table. So it's very important you use the where clause to prevent errors from happening or to prevent disastrous situations. Thanks for watching. Bye for now. Hello and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, you'll learn how to use the Postgres delete statement to delete rows of a table. So if you wanted to remove a record or a row from a table, you need to use the delete command or statement to achieve that. Let's have a look at a typical syntax for a delete statement. So this is how you would structure a statement. You start with the keyword delete, and then you use the from to indicate the name of the table, and then you add a filter with the where condition. When you're deleting records or rows from a table, if you don't use the where condition or where filter, it will wipe out everything from that table. So it's very important to use the where clause to act as a filter to protect other records in the table. So let's have a look at how we'll implement this. I've logged into my pgadmin 4 tool, and the database I'm going to use to illustrate is the fruits database. This database here, and the table is in the public schema. And the table I'm going to use is this table here called berries. So to make things a lot easier, I'm going to use the built-in script in this pgadmin to save me time. So I'm going to right click and go script. So different kind of scripts you can use here. I'm just going to say I want to delete, and it will write a delete script for me. All I need to do is make some modifications to that script. So basically it starts with the keyword delete, and then from the schema, and then the table name. This is where you specify the condition. Before you perform a delete, it's always best sometimes to check this table, what's in the table first. So I'll do select star from berries. I'm just going to highlight that and click execute so I can see the data in the table before I make any deletion. So let's say I want to delete this record here called strawberries UK. The way I will achieve that is in the where condition. I just come here. When you're deleting, make sure you've got the right table. By using the script option from the pgadmin, it just makes things a lot easier for you. Although you can also manually write that. It just saves you time. So I'm deleting from the berries table, which belongs to the public schema. So I'm deleting where is where I specify the condition. So when you delete, you actually delete a record. A line, all these are all records. So I'm deleting where the berry underscore ID is equals to 1. That is basically the condition. If I didn't have this where clause and I just say delete from public berries, it can wipe out all the records from the table. So you can imagine if he had millions of records or thousands, he'll wipe them out. So the where clause is very important. What that means, it will only delete records that matches this criteria where the berry ID, berry underscore ID is 1. So let's run that and we can see what it does. Execute. Tells me it's returned, so it's done the job. So if I run this again, there shouldn't be any record for strawberry. All right, so you can see it has record 1 no longer exists, where you've got berry underscore ID 1. It has removed that record from the table. So the process is the same, whether you're deleting 1 record or you're deleting 1,000 records. The key thing to take away here is that you must always use the where clause. If you do not use the where clause when you're deleting, it can cause catastrophic issues by removing records you didn't intend to remove. Very important to specify the where clause in your delete statement. That's it. Thanks for watching. Bye for now. Hello and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, you'll learn how to insert new rows into a database table using the insert command. Sometimes when you create a new table in a database, it is bare, it doesn't have any data. In order to add data, you need to use the Postgres insert statement to insert data or rows of data into the table. A typical syntax to insert data or rows into a table is like this. You begin with the insert into clause followed by the name of the table, and then in parentheses you specify the column names. If the table has got 2 columns, you specify the 2 columns, and then you add the values. The values basically is where you specify the data you're trying to insert, and the values must match the column and also in the order. So these are the columns you want to insert data or row into. You specify that first, and then in the values you have to separate each of the values by a comma. The value list must be in the same order as the column list specified after the table name, which is this one. So if I've got column 1, which is an integer, column 2, which is a string, in the value list it must correspond or must match, must be in the same order. I can't have a data type here of integer and then here I have a data type of string. It will not work. So the format, the column names and the values you enter must match. If this is an integer, the value I'm entering here must reflect that, and so on. When you're inserting or adding rows to a table, you can add 1 row at a time, or you can insert multiple values. So let's see how this works. So I've logged into my PG4 admin tool. I'm going to expand the databases. I've got 3 databases here. The database I'm going to use is the fruits database. And if I go to the schema here, within the schema, I've got the public schema, and then I've got the tables. This database has got two tables, oranges and berries. So I want to insert some rows, some data into the berries table. So what I can do, I'll right click where it's got berries, and then I'll click on the query tool. Okay, I can either do that, or if I want to save time, I can go to scripts and click on insert script. So that will add some of the script for me. All I need to do is make some modifications. So by doing it via the script option, it saves me a bit of time. So it has kindly done the insert for me, so I don't need to add that again. It's also added the public, which is the name of the schema, and then it's added the name of the table, which is berries. So the dot separates the table name from the schema name, and you can see the parentheses here. That's the opening parenthesis, and this is the closing parenthesis. And you see it's identified the name of my columns. Berry underscore ID is put that in there for me, and berry underscore name is put that in for me. It can't do the values because it doesn't know what values I'm trying to add. So you notice that each of the values have been separated by a comma. So all I need to do, I know that berry ID is an integer, so it must take a number. So I'll put number 1 there. If I put anything other than a number, it will not work because I'm trying to enter the wrong data type into a column that does not accept a non-integer data type. And in here, if I do the same, if I enter an integer, it will complain. So what I need to do is enter the correct data type. So I'm going to type in strawberry. And do that. Because it's a string, I need to enclose the values in quotes, and then you end that with a semicolon. Now let me execute, and hopefully it should insert the record. If I click on this here, the execute option, we should see it says query returned successful. So query returned, so it has inserted. So let's quickly check by typing in a quick select statement. So I do select star from berries. Berries is the name of the table, and I execute. Ooh, doesn't like it. Error, duplicate key. All right, has worked. The reason I had an error is that because I didn't select this and I was trying to run the query, what it's trying to do was trying to run both queries. It was trying to run this and it was trying to run this. So it was erroring because it thinks I'm trying to add the same data I've already added. So when you have multiple scripts in the editor and you want to execute only a particular one, it's probably best to just highlight that one so the editor doesn't get confused. So as you can see now, I've got a record in our table called berries. That's the ID, that's the name. In some databases, you can set the primary key, or this column here, an ID column, you can set that to auto increase. What that means that you can set up what is known as a sequence. So each time you add a record, it automatically, increases. You don't have to manually add this column. It will auto increase for you. All right, we've learned how to insert a single record, which is what I've done here. So now we're going to insert multiple records. So again, the query is the same. The only difference here is that I've added this to, I'm inserting multiple records. So the values has to match the columns. So I've got berry ID, which is an integer column. So this is the values for that. So I add the berry ID will be this, and the berry name will be that. The second value will be 3, and this will be blueberry. I just need to change the name. I didn't change that. I just changed that to blackberries, and I'll change this to raspberries. Okay, so now if I execute this, I just highlight it. It should insert 3 extra records. Tells you there. Okay, so now I've got 3 extra records inserted. I come here, I run this select statement, I highlight it and click. You can see these are all the records. Now you can see this 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's how you insert records or data into a table. Notice that in production live databases, where you have an integer column, normally that is auto populated with a sequence. So you don't necessarily have to manually add this column here. You just add a sequence, and the sequence will auto insert the next value for you. So that is it for this lecture on inserting records into a table. Thanks for watching, and bye for now. Hello and welcome to this lecture. Postgres uses comparison operators to test for equality and inequality. So in this lecture, I am going to explain some of the comparison operators that Postgres uses. So here is a table of some of the common comparison operators used in Postgres. We'll start with the very common one, which is the equals to. This here basically is used to set, if you want to check if a value is equals to something, you'll be using the equals to sign. So you're checking the condition if something matches something or is equals to something. If you want to check if something is not equals to, if a value does not match or is not equal to, if you want to check that condition, you use the not equals to sign, which is this. There are two you can use. You can either use this one, which is which looks like an angle bracket. You use this, or you can use this one here. So either of these two symbols will achieve the same purpose for the not equals to. If you want to check if a condition, if something is greater than something, you use this. This is the greater than sign. If you want to check if something is greater than or equals to, you use this sign. This is greater than or equals to. If you need to check for a value that is less than, you use this. This is less than symbol. And if you want to check if something is less than or equals to, you use this. All right. The way I tend to remember this, if you use your left hand basically you represent less than, and for greater than you use your right hand. That's how I tend to remember them. So this here means less than or equals to. If you want to check if a value is less than or equals to, you use this symbol here. The in operator basically is used to match a value in a list. Usually it's placed in between parentheses. So if you want to search for certain criteria in a list to match, you use the in operator. You use the between operator to check for a range of value. If you want to check for a range of value to check a criteria, you'll be using the between, and you specify the range, and the data or whatever you're looking for will match the value you specified in that range. You can also use a like operator. Usually a like operator is used to match pattern in a column, and you use that in combination with two wildcards, the percent and the underscore. I'm just going to quickly show you a couple of examples using the comparison operators. I'm going to use our sample database, which is a DVD rental database, and I'm going to use a table or a couple of tables from this database. So these are the tables. The database has 15 tables. So I'm going to expand this table here. And the first table I'm going to use is the payment table, this table here. So let me right click on the table and select the query tool and quickly write a quick query to illustrate one of the comparison operators. This table has 6 columns. I'm going to just use all the columns rather than select specifics. So I'm going to do a select star from, and then I specify the name of the table, which is payment. Before I use any comparison operator, I just want to run this query so you can see before and after. So if I execute that, keep an eye on the bottom right here. It says 14,000, over 14,000 rows retrieved. Now I'm going to use a comparison operator inside the where clause, and that should limit the amount of records returned. So I'm going to add a where clause here as a filter, and I'm going to say where, so only records that matches the conditions in the where clause will be returned. So I'm not expecting 14,000 records to be returned. So I'm going to say where the amount, which is this column here, is greater than 999. So I'm using a comparison operator here, which is the greater than sign. So I'm saying that only one records return that matches this condition. So only where the amount is greater than 999. So I don't expect 14,000. So let me run that, and you should see a much reduced. You can see 107. It has matched the criteria I have set using the greater than sign. So you can see here, all the amounts here are above 999 because that's what I've specified. Only those that matches this amount will be returned. Although I've used the greater than sign, this is applicable to the less than, greater than or equals to, and other operators. All right, let's do one more example. I'm going to pick a different table this time. I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to pick this table here called city. It has 4 columns. So let's do a quick select on that. I'm going to do a select star from city. And let me just run that and see what we get. So we have 600 records returned for that table. So I want to reduce that. So I'm going to apply a filter. So it won't be reduced by much. So what I'm going to do, I am going to get rid of the semicolon there and add a filter. So I'm going to say where. So I'm going to say where city, this city here, this column called city, where city, I'm going to go for this one here called York. All right, so what this query will do, it will exclude, it will return everything apart from York. So if I run this query again, you will not see an entry for York because it will be excluded. What this symbol is, it means not or not equals to. That means return everything apart from this, where the city name is not York. So let's run that. We can see what happens. All right, so it's returned everything. It used to be 600 records, so you can see it's now showing 599, which means it has excluded York. So normally you would have seen the York now, but there is nothing, no entry for York. So that's basically how you use some of these operators. So you can, instead of using this, you can use the exclamation, and that means the same thing as that. It means not equals to. So if I look out for Abu Dhabi, if I change that to Abu Dhabi, Abu Dhabi, notice the entry here, number 3, Abu Dhabi. If I run this, I expect this query to exclude Abu Dhabi. As you can see, Abu Dhabi was number 3. You can see number 3 is being excluded from the query output. So that's basically how you use some of these comparison operators. Many thanks for watching, and bye for now. Hello and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, I will show you how to use the Postgres between operator. The between operator basically is used to match a value against a range of values. The values it can match includes numbers, text, or dates. The between operator is usually included or defined within the where clause of the select statement. So this is how the syntax looks if you need to include the between operator inside your select statement. So once you've defined the select statement, you can either specify column names or you can use an asterisk. By using asterisk, that means it will retrieve all the column names. Then you specify the table name from the from field, and inside the where clause you specify the name of the column, and then you add the between operator followed by the values you want to check against. So you specify the values you want to match inside a range of values, and the data will be returned by the query. So let's go over to our PG admin tool and see how this works. So I have logged into my PG admin 4 tool, and the table I'm going to illustrate the between operator with is going to be the payment table. And this payment table here belongs to the DVD rental database, which is this database here. So I'm going to use the payment table. Before I do that, I just want to expand the table so we can take a look at the columns within the table. So I click on the plus sign and it should reveal. So these are all the columns in the table. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns. So what I want to achieve here, I want to use the between operator to query some data. So let's open up a query tool, right click on the payment table and go query tool, and that should launch the tool. When writing select statements, it's best to avoid using the asterisk if you can. If you don't need all the data from the table, it's best not to use the asterisk, because retrieving all the data, if it's a table that's got a lot of data, retrieving that data over the network each time can slow down or can impact on the network traffic. So as much as possible, if you know the columns you need to retrieve data from, it's best to specify them rather than use the asterisk to get all the data from all the columns. So in this table here, I want to only pick a few columns here. So I'm going to select the customer ID here, customer underscore ID. I'm going to select the payment underscore ID, and I'm going to select the amount. So let me define or build a query. I do a select followed by the name of the first column, which is customer underscore ID, and you separate each of the columns from each other with a comma. And the next the next column I want is the payment ID column, which is this column here. So it's payment underscore ID, and then a comma, and I'll select the other column, which is this amount column. Next, I specify the table the data is coming from. The name of the table is called payment. So I'll type in payment. The next line is where I will specify the where clause. Inside the where clause is where I will specify the criteria or the between operator. Actually, before I do that, I'm just going to comment out this. So I'm going to comment out this where clause for now. I just want to show you something quickly. I want to execute this query as it is, so that you can see. It says I've made an error. Okay, I had an error because I didn't comment out the where clause properly, so I've commented it out now. So you can see here that this is the data that has been returned. I have not applied any filters or used any operators here. So I just wanted you to see what the data looks like before and after I apply a filter. So these are all the rows. So let me execute that again so you can see the number of rows. So if we look at here, it tells you 1,400. This is the row 14596 row. Okay, over 14,000 rows returned. So I don't want all that. I want to filter that out. So this is where I'm going to use the between operator. And the column I am going to use is this amount column here. So you can see there are different amounts here, $7.99 in dollars, different various amounts. So I'm going to filter based on this. I'm going to set a range using the between operator based on this column here called amount. I just wanted to show you that first before including the between operator inside the where clause. So now I can remove the comment and now add the where clause. So I just need to get rid of that asterisk. So inside the where clause now is where I will include the column name, which is amount, which is this column here. And then I'll add the between operator. Notice the color has changed because it's a keyword. So then I specify the value. So I want a value between, say, 7 and 8. Notice the and is the color has changed as well because it's also a keyword. All right. Previously, when I executed this query without the where clause and without the between operator, I had over 14,000 records returned. Now that I've applied the filter with the where clause and added a range of data to return, so I've said where the amount, which is this column here, is between 7 and 8. So it will only return data that matches this criteria. So I don't expect to get 14,000 records returned. So let me execute. I'll click on that and we should see it tells me 626 rows retrieved. So that is much smaller than the previous record where I did not apply a filter or a between operator. So you can see these are the conditions here specified in the where clause using the between. So between is used to check against a range of values. So you can see here I've specified the amount between 7 and 8. So it's only return data that matches a range of 7 and 8. So if you look through the data, you would not see anything other than between 7 and 8. So you can see that all the data that's returned is within that range, 7 and 8. So that's how you use the between operator to also filter data from a table. Many thanks for watching. Bye for now. Hello and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, I'm going to show you how to use the not between operator inside your select statement. It basically works like the between operator, but in the opposite direction. So basically it is used to return values not within a range that you have specified. Like the between operators, the values can be numbers, it can be text, or it can be dates. Also, it's usually included in the where clause. So let's have a look at the syntax, which shows you how to specify the not between operator. So basically the not between operator will only return values not specified within the range of values you have defined, and it is defined inside the where clause. So let's go to our PG admin tool and have a look at how this works. So I'm going to use the payment table here. This payment table belongs to the DVD rental database. So I'm going to quickly run a query on this table so I can illustrate how the not between operator works. So let me expand the table so you can see the columns. These are all the columns within the table. So I'm going to right click on the table and click on the query tool to launch the query tool. And once the query tool is open, I'm just going to write a few statements. I'm going to select specific columns rather than use all the columns. So let me begin by typing in a select statement. So I'll start with the select keyword, followed by the columns I want to use. I want to use the customer ID column, the payment ID column, and the amount column. So I'll select the customer first. Customer underscore ID, comma, and then the next will be the payment underscore ID, and I put comma, and then add the next column, which is the amount ID, amount column. So I've now got three columns: customer ID, payment ID, and amount. So you can add these columns on separate lines if you want, but I like doing it this way to make my query shorter. All right, so now I'll specify where the data is coming from. I need to indicate the table. Name of the table is called payment. Next, all right, what I want to do before I apply the where clause and the not between operator, I want to just run this query as it is so we can see. Look out on the bottom right hand corner. It will show you the amount of records returned without the where clause or the not between operator. So let me execute that. If you look here on the right, it should show. It tells you, see that 14,596 rows returned. All right, over 14,000. So I want to reduce that amount. So to do that, I'm going to apply the where clause here. I'm going to type in where, and I'm going to use this amount column to do the filtering where amount, which is this column here, these values are all in dollars. So I'm going to say where the amount, and I'm going to attach the not, where the amount is not between, I'm going to specify 0 and 8. So that is a lot. So I don't expect the records to return for 14,000 or more. So I expect it to be much less, because it's only going to return values that does not match these values here. So it will exclude anything between 0 and 8. So let me execute and look at here. It says 780 rows. That's much more lower than 14,000. So I've used the not between operator to exclude data to be returned by the query. All right, so that's how you use the not between operator. You can use that to exclude a range of data that the select statement or query returns. Many thanks for watching, and bye for now. Hello and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, I will introduce you to the like operator. The like operator basically is used to match pattern in a column. It is used to query data by using pattern matching technique. It is used with the where clause to search and match specified patterns in a column. It is also used in combination with wildcards, and the two common wildcards that are used with the like operator are the percent wildcard that allows you to match string of any length or characters including 0. So when you are using the percent in combination with the like operator, the percent sign actually represents 0, 1 or more multiple characters. So that percent can represent a 0, 1 or multiple characters including 0. The other wildcard that is used with the like operator is the underscore. The underscore actually is used to match a single character. It represents a single character. Just to recap, the like operator is used in the where clause to search for a specified pattern in a column. Let's take a look at the syntax. Syntax represents how you would structure a like operator with your queries. So this is a simple syntax whereby you select your column names if you're choosing columns. If not, you can use all the column by using an asterisk. You specify the table name, and then inside the where clause is where you, after the column, you specify the like pattern, the pattern you are trying to match. The best way to show you this is to actually see it in action. So I'm going to head over to my PGAdmin tool and experiment with one of the tables in our sample database. I have logged into my PGAdmin 4 and I'm going to use the DVD rental sample database. This database here. It has 15 tables. I'm just going to expand and look for the table I'm going to use. I'm going to use the customer table here. Let me expand that so you can see the columns in the table. So these are all the columns. It's got 10 columns, 10 columns inside the customers tables. Suppose the manager of a store ask you to find a customer that he does not remember the name exactly. he just remembers that the customer's first name begins with something like a J or Jen. How do you find the exact customer that the store manager is asking for? You may find the customer in the customer table by looking at the first name column to see if there's any value that begins with Jen. Again, this can be tedious, and depending on how large the data in the table is, it can be time consuming. The best way to search for that kind of information is to use the like operator. So let's open up the query editor, right click on the table name and click query tool to launch the query window. Once the query window launches, we can begin writing our queries. Give it a few minutes. All right, we're not going to use all the columns from the table. Remember, the query is basically to find a customer whose name begins with Jen, Jen. That's all the store manager can remember. Not quite sure the full name. Just all he remembers is that it begins with a Jen, Jen. So what I'm going to do is select, and I'm going to pick the first name column, a comma, followed by the last name column. And when you are specifying columns, make sure you specify the way they've been defined in the table. As you can see, my first name matches the first name here, last name matches the last name there. Next thing I need is specify the name of the table. It's called customer. And then next thing I need to do is specify the where clause. And inside the where clause, this is where I apply the condition. I specify the column first where I'm trying to search for the pattern. So it's going to be the first name, because all the manager remembers that the first name begins with something like Jen. So I'm going to specify the first name column, and then I'll introduce the like operator. I'll say like, because it's a string, I need to enclose it in quotes, and then insert a wildcard, a percentage wildcard. Actually, the percentage has to come before the ending quote. So this is how you would structure that. When you're searching for a pattern in a column, if you're searching for a pattern that begins with something, the percentage is placed at the end here of the pattern you're trying to search for. If you are searching for a pattern that ends in something, the percentage will be in front of the character pattern you're trying to search for. Because I'm searching for a first name that starts or looks like Jen, the percentage is placed at the end of the character I'm searching for. So let's give that a go and see what we get. So I'm going to click on this here to execute the query. And as you can see, we've got 3 rows from that table. And as you can see, they all begin with Jen. We've got Jennifer, we've got Jenny, and we've got Jenny. So from this data, the manager should be able to spot the customer he was trying to look for. So that's basically how you use a like operator. So you can use that to search for different types of pattern as well. If, for example, you wanted to search for someone whose first name, begins with A, again, you can change that from Jen to A, and it will search for everyone whose name begins with a A. There you go. See, it searches, that's the pattern. This is everyone whose name begins with a A. Okay, so you can change that. If I move the percentage from the beginning to the end, from the end here to the front, what this is saying is that search the pattern for anyone